Now recording on YouTube. Just about set up on YouTube there. Got the little bar running across the bottom there. All right. Good. I'm going to go ahead and get started here, Melissa. I think we will probably have folks jump in with an ad for GigaParts here momentarily, but I would like to welcome everybody to our Hamcation Special Edition 2021. You've joined the forum for amateur radio in outer space, going to be presented by Melissa Poore, KM4CZN. She is actually our award winner for the Carol Perry Educator of the Year from last year that she received that. So I'm glad to have her back this year at Hamcation. So, and she's joined with two students today. We have William and Elaine that will join her as part of the presentation. She'll be part of our panelists there. As we proceed through with this, we're going to turn around and ask you to hold your Q&A. We'll do a session at the end of this, but 1:45 we'll start in with the questions and try to answer as many of those as we can. After the webinar is closed, I believe Melissa will share an email address for any of the questions that are not answered, that they can be answered at a later time. I want to remind everyone this webinar is also being live streamed on YouTube and will be recorded for later viewing. So you'll be able to come back and check that out at a later time. You can find the information for the YouTube streams out on our Hamcation website at www.hamcation.com under forums. Links are currently out there and can be viewed on YouTube. Just so you know, your camera does not need to be on and your microphone has been muted. If there's a special need, I will be able to turn around as your moderator to temporarily unmute your microphone for you. But again, I'm very thrilled to have Melissa back this year as part of our Hamcation forums. And I will turn it over to Melissa, and I will turn around. She's an excellent individual as far as promoting education with our youth from a STEM perspective, with a little bit of a focus on the amateur radio. And she's got a major role in the ARES program, where she is our liaison for the contacts with the space station. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa, and let's get going.
Thank you, Mike. All right, so yes, I am a high school engineering teacher in Arlington, Virginia, Bishop O'Connell High School. I'm so excited to have Will and Elaine here with me, both officers in my engineering club and co-presidents of my amateur radio club. So I do have a presentation. I wanted to show you pictures that just really give you so much more than I can say in this limited presentation. And I also have some details and facts to share with you that will be a lot on the screen, so you can, kind of take what you want from this. So yes, let me go ahead and start my presentation. And thank you so much for coming and joining us this afternoon. All right, so you should be hearing me and seeing my presentation. Excellent. So I am calling it Amateur Radio in Outer Space because that's absolutely what we've done with learning about amateur radio. We just keep going to space and back to Earth with it. So it's very exciting for me to share with you many ways we've used it. So this is my journey of using amateur radio as a tool for STEM education. And I think you'll see how it's transformed my teaching and hear from my students themselves what it's done for them. So the takeaways. There's a great image, I love it. The CubeSat we launched with amateur radio telemetry and SSTV mission on board. And that was the beginnings, and now we're here today. So I'm going to give you that little timeline. We are going to discuss mainly the amateur radio strand of what we do, but we have some little tidbits we want to decorate this presentation with as well, because this has truly inspired my students in so many pathways of STEM, careers, internships, contesting, things I could have never imagined, all happening. So I share with you today my journey. And we're going right to the start of my amateur radio. And that was at a K-8 school where local hams helped me learn about radio. And my mentor, Chuck Norton, a silent key now, was instrumental in giving me support and confidence, like I'm trying to do for my students. When you do a new field, a new topic, when you strive for more, when you try to achieve something insurmountable, like build a satellite and launch it to space. So that brings me to the mission, my personal mission to understand radio and get my own license. It did not happen naturally or quickly. I do not have a background in physics, so I have to say that could have helped, or electrical engineering, that really could have helped. So it took me a couple years of studying, researching, and understanding, joining a local club, and actually practicing using SSTV and SDR in my classroom to teach the high and the low of transmitting an image from space and transmitting it from Earth to space. So we did a lot of that. We used a balloon to demonstrate the mission. And here, I'm playing around with my, I guess the way I want to run this right now, but I want to go ahead and just say that my students on the panel, they were part of all of this. So they were one in kindergarten when they started with me, one in third, and this would be my computer classroom where I had 400 students learn how to build a satellite, learn how to dress up in the bunny suit and use the ESD strap to protect their device, and so many other things. And in that top right corner is a picture of a very special aspect of the whole thing that I feel like anyone from 0 to 100 can connect to. And that is having something that you're part of do something huge, like go to space. So this right here is an engraved metal plate with all students over those 4 years, so over 400 students over the 4 years, sign this giant piece of butcher paper. I shrunk it down 100 times, and it was then flipped over and put on our final model and went to space. So I had a couple prototypes that weren't perfect, but they are special for me to show on Earth what was there. The lower right-hand corner is what we thought was our final model. And then we were gifted with a CubeSat Launch Initiative grant, CSLI, with NASA, which had many gifts and many constraints, many new variables to deal with. So this is how my space journey started. So let's see what happens. There's the balloon test, one of two. We had tethered tests. This was before restrictions were this as tight as they are now. I can't even do a tether test in this area in Northern Virginia. There are some of our middle schoolers attaching the payload with the real space payload on board, but the radio was not installed yet, and we were using handheld, some little handies with duct tape over the buttons to demonstrate that we can make it work up to 1,000 feet. So we had kids with iPads tracking, we had students walking around teaching, and this was one of the instances during the 4-year build. And look, we did it. There we are, coming out of the very first NanoRacks deployment. It was so exciting. We started this in 2010. I thought we might make a ping pong sat or a CanSat, might go to near space, the stratosphere, but no. Our dreams got bigger, we reached higher, we went for gold, and it was so exciting. So you can see a little red part, that is ours. And that was a school that was one of 5 ground schools that was an RMOC for us, a remote mission operations center, with a ground station and radio that I sent to them. And they were listening. So they also included their signatures, and the more the merrier in space. And when you are able to do something big, you want everyone to be able to practice with it, use it, and be part of it. And just being part of a satellite data test is exciting, but making that possible for other people, that was big too. So this is a picture from one of the cameras that is attached to the outside of the space station. And at the time, I had no idea that someday I would be working with this very group and be part of one of their privileged committee members and ambassador to help with the future vision of the International Space Station. So the man that sent me this picture, Dan Barstow, just retired from the National Lab, but he sent me this back then. And as a teacher, he wanted me to see this image. So it actually was part of our research. So look at this next image, which is incredible. Another picture. Okay, so our data didn't come back. We waited for 9 months, but you can see our antennas did not deploy. There's many things that we know that happen. We had our fishbone diagram that showed us a couple different factors that played into it, but we were on the ISS for about 6 months before we were deployed. So we were excited though. We still did it, and we were going to do it again. And that would be, I think it launched in 2015. So just before it launched, the next few pictures are details for you. In 2014, in February, we got the grant. We had to do a total rebuild. We had to have it ready to go in stow within 4 months, totally take it apart and redo it. So exciting for me, but giant hurdles. I passed my technician license in July, and I created the first radio station at our elementary school, and I made it half my call sign and half the school name, KM4STM. And I also started to get connected with a bigger community related to amateur radio. And that's when I talked to ARRL about my project, and also to ARIS. So amateur radio in space, another first, okay? So we didn't stop there. We had people helping us from all over. And we were the first NanoRacks deployment, the first elementary school in the world to build and launch. So here's where we went with it. Amateur radio in high school. After 7 years, I went on to the high school level where my career started, and I was so excited to apply my new aspirations at this level. And I was lucky enough to be a feeder school for some of my elementary students. So with a high school teaching job, I was thinking big, but I wanted my students to choose what we do. And I started having them come and ask about, what are we going to do next? Are we doing amateur radio? Are we doing satellites? So this became an exciting part. I was already connected to ARIS, and I became more involved. And I came more involved with the ops on the ground, and helping other schools run their contact. And most recently, the past 2 months, I have been asked to be one of the main operators to help support contacts through K6DUE at Goddard Space Flight Center. So I'm so excited. I've assisted on them, but now I'll be a more integral part. And this was our ARIS contact. And I had one of the people from the ops team, Mark Steiner, come speak. I had so many students, and Will, he happens to be in that picture down center, participating in this contact. So helping other schools do ARIS, okay? I wanted more than that. I wanted to help other schools use amateur radio telemetry, experience deeper engineering I guess, exposure and opportunity. So that is when I just became more of ARIS and part of their U.S. Education Committee. I started working with a group called AMSAT, AMSAT Education, and learning about opportunities that other people have already done. Want to capitalize off of what other teachers do, and that is why we're here today, is to share and to hope that you can learn from our successes and our hurdles, and see if you can have a takeaway that jet starts a school or a teacher or a student. So let's go on. I want to talk about the exciting developments lately, which is the ARIS radio team I'm working with. It's a pull-out group of our ARIS Education. And we have something that we've developed called an experimenter's kit. And that has been what we have been playing with in our amateur radio club during this very horrible, difficult time in education, where we have social distancing, we have this unusual time in society where we have to be creative about how to learn hands-on, how to work collaboratively from home. So I think I addressed that briefly in one of these, but it's understood, I think. But I actually, I had to get them hardware. I had to get them antennas, and the antennas that we thought would work didn't work. So, beta testing is critical. So I was thrilled when Alan Johnston, who I hope he's on this call right now, he's worked with me tightly in all of these groups, but he is the developer of the ARIS Pi, which is our new tool, our new toy that is like a complete ground station, pretty much. It's so neat. So you'll hear more about that. But this is my ARIS fun. So if you know a kid that likes space, you need to bring ARIS to their school or to their group. So in that top corner, I'm holding an actual prototype, a mock-up that actually works. You can connect your mobile device to it and use amateur radio bands and use that as an antenna. And it demonstrates the soft antennas required for EVA walks. And when astronauts are outside of the space station, there's so many critical components. So our antenna had to include, you see that black and white strips, a handle for them to use to hold it, to walk by it, to grip, that special film protecting the antennas. And they're like the poppable, it's like the old slap bracelets, but the formed metal that, curls and then also goes back to form. And in the lower left, you see Paolo Nespoli. He is the Italian astronaut that connected with me on my very first ground operations at K6DOE. And you can see that on the screen right there in the ISS, that Melissa Poor, KM4CZN, has made contact with the ISS. So it is powerful. So the ARIS program is powerful. So I'm so proud to be a part of it in so many ways. So what are my students doing now? And this is what we are doing now. We are playing around with new prototypes, our own ideas. We're really, really excited about satellites. So we've been working on simulators, models, prototypes for 3 years. We've used different hardware from 3D printed materials, the AMSAT simulator, and right now I'm holding up our 1.0, but we're about to upgrade to the newest, latest version. But this has been a really exciting Kickstarter for us to think about and talk about a new satellite project that should be coming down the pike. So as we've done that, we've continued to work with industry people, professors, engineers, but tightly with a few people, in particular, Villanova University professor already mentioned. And thank you, Alan, for all of your support, hours of workshops, exciting things shipped to the students directly from him, so they could be beta testers with the radio kit team. And this virtual learning experience for all of the kids and teachers has been really different. And we've had to look and think about it in new ways. And I think my team of officers and all of my clubs, and these two students are in two of my largest clubs, we thought outside the box. We didn't let the world stop us. We kept doing what we wanted to do. And I'm just so happy that they can present some of their work today to you. We have a launch coming up, and it's not the same that we can't all have these experiences in person. And the launch is in 7 days on NG15. We're so excited. So before I digress, I want to finish these last few picture slides so I can get to them. And part of what they have done is they have helped me communicate at things like the AMSAT symposiums, what amateur radio can do for a STEM program, can do for innovation, and what it can do to power out new ideas for teachers in the classroom, okay? So something new is always difficult, but you just start one thing at a time. We started with amateur radio and we kept threading everything through it. So here we are, still launching satellites, trying to thread digital communications and amateur radio through all that we do. It's what we know. Not every opportunity is the same, and that's what's so exciting. So this new development was ThinSat, and these are the type of satellites that Bob Twiggs, who our club just interviewed on Monday. He has been a profound mentor and leader since 2012 for me, talking about how to help educators build satellites with their students. And I had a school nearby, Thomas Jefferson, one of the leading science and technology school in the nation. And I was down the road, a couple miles, and I wanted to make my school the K-8 leading STEM school in the nation for satellites, STEM, why not? So that is the path I was on, and that is how it brought me to this powerful moment. I can see the seeds I planted in some of my former students, and I can see how it ripples over to our new club members that we onboard. So this hands-on experience, career connections, the enthusiasm that builds when you can make progress at abstract, crazy, amazing physics and technology like aerospace. So bringing space to kids, making it accessible, that's what I think amateur radio does. And it empowered me, especially with the license. It gave me credibility, and it just kind of was a first foothold on many more things that I have achieved and continue to go for. So it's been very exciting for me. So here's a picture, and let's see, Elaine, you were not at this event. Will happens to be. This one was 3 years ago, I think, at the AMSAT International Conference. So, and that is Kenneth Ransom, a super important person in our amateur radio on the space station. He trains the astronauts, helps them get their license. And it was really great to let my students meet him. And he also he helped you later as an engineering, I guess he let you interview him and help with your project for that contest. So all of these experiences keep building on each other. Okay, so I'm watching my time. I'm still okay. I have a couple minutes before they come on. Here is an example of our excitement. Okay, top right corner, there's Elaine. She is over the AMSAT simulator. We are getting it to run. We're demonstrating to other club members what we can do with it. We have the yellow light on the side. It is on the rotating round table. And they are working with the graphs for the solar panels, I believe. We had something we had to work through at first to get it going. And that was part of the excitement. It's not just easy. It's not all plug and play. And then there's the payload chips that we are launching on our ThinSat. And we have had long hopes to intermesh opportunities between our ThinSat and our amateur radio experience. So right now that uses Globalstar satellites for live transmission. So we don't use amateur radio for these short-lived satellites. They go to ELEO. And this would be one of those short-lived satellites that the balloon test was in 2018. And it was called Space Toast. There is Mr. Bob Twiggs, the amazing Bob Twiggs, with me at a restaurant, talking to me about a new thing called ThinSat. And I said, how can I get in? I'm at a high school. These kids want to do it. And so I wrote on a napkin my idea, and we got 2 launches, and that is the launch we're about to have. And here we are. Elaine, you're in this picture, right? You're with your sunglasses. That's me in the middle. There's Mr. Bob Twiggs. And we're at the launch of NG11. So that was one of our ThinSats. And here we are with the CubeSat Sim in the top right corner, working with some of our Sea Perch Club and Aviation Club, showing them our satellite. And I do want to point out, we do have a new mission patch I'm going to show you, but you know, the whole thing about amateur radio is it's authentic, it's real, it's technical, and our whole mission, that's what we strive to do. So this patch is also authentic. We have meaning developed in it. So what the ThinSats do, you can see the Antares rocket is above the sun. The sun represents a maiden mission for both ThinSat and our school. The satellites were deployed at 207 kilometers, about 2.5 minutes after launch. And they actually came from the Cygnus spacecraft. So if you know about the payload resupply missions, they have a robotic spacecraft that flies about 2.5 days to get to the ISS to resupply it with spacesuits, food, tools, and science experiments. So in this particular instance, our science experiment was on a rotating ring on the front of the spacecraft, and it deployed about 63 ThinSats all at once, tethered together. So you see, we called it Space Toast, and it's in the shape of bread because it's actually a slice. I'm holding up this CubeSat, but it's a slice of a CubeSat, and it's about the size of a piece of bread. They are placed like a loaf in a Peapod ejector. And so that's our Space Toast. And we also have a little bit about how it's toasted during re-entry and becomes burnt toast. So we do love our space missions. So what is our vision for the future? So before we get to them, I want to round that out, and I want to say they're in their senior year. I'm still applying for grants for my amateur radio station. I have built a large heap of recycled mobile handies that work awesome for teaching about amateur radio. And I have a bunch of handmade Morse code here. So I definitely have tools to teach amateur radio, but I would love to become a world-class ground station to exhibit, demonstrate, bring people in, you know, later down the road when it's safer, for workshops and demonstrations on all the ways my students have just exploded using amateur radio as the center of the hub. So before I go on, I still dream big. So I'm working with these groups and I'm looking for new projects. I'm looking for new ways to have a foothold for all of education, all of amateur radio hobbyists, and how can we keep exploring and expanding amateur radio. And these are the groups I'm working with. And in particular, I'd like to say that I recently have this, something that's been asked upon me. If you have any thoughts about how amateur radio can further be used to generate excitement for education, research, and vision on the space station, you know, I really want to hear about it. We are working super hard on Gateway. I'm working with Frank Bauer on the idea that teachers need to be at the ground level of everything really happening. So ARIS was the first experiment on the International Space Station, which has its 20th year anniversary. And we are hoping ARIS will be the first experiment on Gateway, the Lunar Gateway. So as I go on, now I want to introduce my students from first grade to now seniors. And actually, we think actually it was kindergarten. I want you to please welcome Will and Elaine. My students, my future engineers, and everything that they pursue, they're natural engineers. And let me go ahead, and I think we're starting with Will.
Yeah. So as Mrs. Poor said, I have been a student of hers since I was in kindergarten. And the first encounter that I had with amateur radio was STM-SAT-1, as Mrs. Poor was talking about earlier. I remember us calling it Mission Possible, and there were all these different events and lessons that we went through. So of course I remember the high altitude balloon test. How could you forget, looking up into the sky and seeing this thing that you've been working on like attached to a balloon and tested. So that was definitely a standout experience for me. And I also remember we had a contact with the International Space Station in our school library. So we got to ask questions to astronauts. And that was also really exciting for me to I guess it definitely blew my middle school mind to be able to talk to people who are in space. That was definitely that's sort of where my interest for amateur radio started. As I sort of started to move toward the end of middle school, Mrs. Poor left St. Thomas More for her job at Bishop O'Connell, and it turns out that when I went to high school, I ended up at O'Connell again. So I met Mrs. Poor again, and we set off. We hit the ground running. In my sophomore year, we had another contact with the International Space Station, this time through ARIS. And I remember I asked a question about humans on Mars, and another student asked a question about sleep on the International Space Station. That eventually ended up inspiring a project that myself and a few other students ended up working on, where we tried to build a pillow that was designed to facilitate sleep on the International Space Station. And that was for a contest run by NASA and Texas Instruments. And I was also able to, for another International Space Station contact, ask further questions about sleep on the International Space Station. So that first contact sort of set me off into a series of interesting events and opportunities. And that's, at least for now, all I have to say. So I guess I'll turn it over to Elaine, who has some more to say.
Thank you. So hi, everybody. Like Will, I have been a student of Mrs. Poor's for over a decade, and I've known her since third grade. It's been a blessing to be able to get involved in amateur radio and engineering just in general. So at our school, we have a club dedicated just for learning all about amateur radio. So in elementary and middle school, we were very heavily involved with the STM-SAT-1, but all of our information about SSTV, SDR were presented in a very easy to understand format. So the engineering club and our amateur radio club has helped to expand our understanding and our scope of the working components behind STM-SAT-1. So some of our more recent efforts, high school and beyond, have been on satellite simulators, and these have particularly been the CubeSat simulator and the ARIS Pi. And both of these very hands-on experiences, despite being at home. These inventions, they are all thanks to Dr. Johnston. He is a professor at Villanova University, and he led us through each step and taught us how we could decode the simulated data that relate to us, how we could graph and interpret the data that was giving to us. And we were using all sorts of different applications like SDR Sharp or the ASFK decoder. And then we actually got the nicest opportunity to present all of our learning experiences at the 50th AMSAT Symposium. And we talked about our modifications to the CubeSat, our vision about how this could spread satellite education to other students just like us. And then we actually got to present again at the 51st convention or the symposium. Also thanks to Dr. Johnson, and we were talking about the Aris Pi. As you can see in the picture below, we are actually holding the Aris Pi. I have the Aris Pi with me right now. We have been conversing with him lately, getting to learn about the difference between this and the CubeSat Sim, and also all the different utilities with the Aris Pi now that it has a monitor interface that we can work with. And so all these experiences have been so amazing just in terms of inspiring me to go above and beyond in engineering, thanks to Ms. Poor, thanks to Dr. Johnson. Just lately, I was in a team of 5 where I got to participate in this programming competition for NASA, and we were developing an app for the NASA SCAN team to help land people on the moon, which is a really big thing. And we got placed as 1 out of 10 finalists, and we will present this coming Tuesday. So that's just a really huge thing. So I'm very grateful for all of it. And I will now circle it back to Ms. Poor.
Yes, it's so great to hear you both talk about that today, and for me to just reflect on this as well. I'm really proud of both of you, and I really appreciate you coming today. So what I want you to do, we will want to open up to questions, and we'll have a hard cutoff time. But my last thing I would like for you to share is your plans, right? Where are you going to go from here? Your seniors, if you could say a little bit about that, or degree, or any last thoughts. Will?
Okay, so of course, Mrs. Poor said we're both seniors, and definitely thinking about what we're going to do in college. So I have started the application process, and I would like to go to college and major in electrical engineering. And of course, I'd like to continue learning about amateur radio and things like that. So I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. This is a journey of a lifetime, and I'm just glad that I got to be a part of it. And of course, I'd love to continue it.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with what Will said. I know the university that I'm going to, and I will be majoring in either computer science or cybersecurity. I don't want to stop learning about amateur radio. It just has so many possibilities and applications, and I'm just really fascinated about how it works. And actually this summer, Will and I are intending to learn more about amateur radio, actually get our license. And this is something that we've been working toward for a while through study groups. So it's just very exciting.
Okay, nice. So last summer, so my final thoughts. Last summer, I do work with the NASA SCAN team, the navigation, Space Navigation Network, and Space Communication Navigation, sorry. They are who runs the TDRS satellites, deep space mission connections, and some of the biggest transmissions we have, including our astronauts when they first have a new mission, they're run by TDRS. So SCAN is part of NASA. They're incredible. They've launched some of these programs and projects, and it really overlaps with digital communication, wireless technology, and amateur radio. So they have a whole lot of resources. I've been teaming up with them for about, I guess it's been about 6 years now. I met them through my experiences meeting ARRL and ARIS, and then going to help it do presentations about it. And so I guess I'm just really looking to make sure all of you have a takeaway from this of something you want to learn more about, something you want to hand off to somebody, or just be inspired yourself to learn more about something you've heard about here. So we have a lot going on now, and I want to leave you with that next Tuesday and Wednesday, we will be part of a NASA Live TV event on YouTube. But Tuesday at 2:55, Elaine's team will be doing the most high-level part of the contest we didn't even realize, which is seeing if they're going to use your app, and they will be challenged once again. We also have our launch of our ThinSat. We're calling it DJO Polaris mission. And this is our patch that just came about 2 days ago. And you can see I have a shield, I have the International Space Station, I have a star, and our research on this has to do with navigation in ELEO, which is extreme low Earth orbit. So we're really excited. And the mission briefing on February 20th, we submitted video to be on NASA Live TV as an education project going up. So I'm really proud of the way my students can communicate what they've learned and talk to you about how it's transformed their experiences, their choices. I know that the whole point of this was for me to keep kids excited, me stay excited about coming to school, and thank goodness I started this so that we had it during tough times like now. And although they're graduating while this is all going on, they can still excel from their homes virtually and using amazing tools in amateur radio to do real space research, data transmission. So yeah, so thank you amateur radio community for coming to listen to us. I want to leave time for questions. And I do want to encourage you, I couldn't type in the chat, so I think that the QRZ, my email there is great to use also. Mike, shall we start our Q&A portion?
Yes. Yeah, we've got a few questions that have come in through the Q&A session of the Zoom meeting. Let's see, the first one's from Philip. I'm from a small town. We do have one STEM class that I know of. How can I start a club using what you're doing to get more young people into ham radio? And he followed up with, is there a website for this? So.
I guess the first thing I would say, I love to hear excited, I think that might be a student, to go to the ARRL youth education area. There is so much good stuff there. But I do want to go ahead and say that amateur radio is very in-depth, and it isn't necessary to need your license to learn about amateur radio and enjoy the hobby. That will come. So to start, I would say if you know any amateur radio operators in your area, or if you can do a little research, ask people. That is the best way, because we call them hams. That's the short term, that's a nickname maybe you could say, that they enjoy sharing what they know and actually putting it in your hands and letting you try it, like on-air activity and participating in a contest using their call sign. There's all sorts of things you can do. So I urge you to go to ARRL and look at the youth activity ideas. I think they have like 25 posted. And also go to ARIS, aris.org, which is ARISS. And there are opportunities there for you to get an ARIS contact and then have some lessons about amateur radio offered to your whole school while you're waiting for the contact.
Thank you. Next question is from Peter. He's got some questions on the launch. So where can we go to watch the launch in 7 days? So I imagine it's kind of going, okay, which is the launch area? Is it the Cape? Is it the Wallops Island?
So it's going to be Wallops Flight Facility, the Delmarva Peninsula on the East Coast, so near Washington, D.C., but you actually can see within about 5-hour radius from the coast. After about 3 to 5 minutes, you can see in the sky. So if you're anywhere in the area of Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, it looks like a little candle with a little fire. But also there'll be a live transmission as if you're right there, starting at 11 a.m. Eastern time of the launch.
And Melissa, who's launching that so they can watch the video feed from the launch company on that, the vehicle?
So Northrop Grumman, I think that NASA Live TV will be your best bet, but Northrop Grumman is the launch provider. It's going on an Antares rocket, and the spacecraft is Cygnus. And our program is part of Virginia Space and MARS, which stands for the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport. And they actually, you'd be surprised, Wallops, you don't hear a lot about it, but it's either the busiest launching facility, if not the one. They send off a lot of sounding rockets too.
Thank you. Let's see, we've got one from William. Is DJO your school? I'm not sure
Yes.
what DJO is.
It stands for Dennis J. O'Connell. So our school's called Bishop O'Connell, and everyone always likes the little acronym, so we call ourselves DJO.
Okay. And then Eric is asking how he can follow your progress. Do you have a website?
I think the best thing is Twitter. I post everything and then they're linked on it's at Melissa Poor. And my school tweets out things, but I have a school STEM page, but they center my Twitter on it. And everything I do in amateur radio and with my students, I put plugs in and highlight it there. And I forgot to say, one huge thing we do is space farming. And we actually just set up yesterday a mock-up of the one inside the space station growing red Russian kale using different light spectrums and intensity for a 28-day study. So go to @Melissa Poor on Twitter.
Okay. Next one's from Wayne. Are you able to continue participation virtually due to COVID?
How about let a student answer that? Elaine?
Yeah, I would say definitely. There's probably not a week that goes by without us meeting at least once or twice a week. And it can be anything from amateur radio meetings to actually our latest interview with Bob Twiggs, which we hope to release before the launch. Just general discussions about engineering and our future projects. Now that we're in a virtual setting, we still are able to get things done. It's very lively. And yeah, I would actually say we're quite as busy as we were pre-COVID.
And I think I could add to that too a little bit. When I contacted Melissa late last summer, as we were getting ready for Hamcation, I think you had a camp going on a summer camp with students that you were working on at the time. So a virtual one. So
it is true. We stayed on all summer. We did a summer speaker series. We had Friday night virtual campouts where we sat in a chair out in the yard and connected. It is true. We stayed excited about something.
Okay. And Wayne also added another follow-up comment. He said, I was trying to introduce ARIES to my daughter's school just prior to the pandemic. How can I convince the school that this is a very worthwhile program?
You know what? If you can find either a teacher's the best, but a student that is fired up about space and they convince their teacher feel free to contact me. And I'd love to talk to that teacher. Some teacher excited science teacher or any teacher that is excited to do something. And that's the angle you need. It's really difficult to convince administrators. It always seems to not be able to, the program doesn't thread as well because you really want it to come from a teacher or student. So I would say target a teacher.
And maybe Melissa, I'll add to that a little bit since I've seen it occur here in my area, is that the amateur group has reached out to some of the science teachers in some of the schools and found some interest there and actually worked with the schools to turn around and get their school submitted to turn around and do a session with the International Space Station. And I know the local hams, you'll usually find the local hams will be thrilled to turn around and come in and help coordinate that, participate that. It is a challenge to turn around and get the school, to have your school selected. It is somewhat of a lottery, but that is another great way to turn around and mention to the school, especially a teacher, and says, how would you like to turn around and speak with a with the astronauts as the space station goes over.
That's a really good point, and that is a good thing, I should say. Call to action, you amateur radio hobbyists, reach out to that student or teacher and say you'll do it with them. The reason there's apprehension is the unknown. So it's a school program, and we have a team of ambassadors, and you're connected to a technical mentor, but a local amateur radio operator is the key to success. And I even wanted it and needed it for my ARIS contact after all my experience. So yeah, thank you for saying that. There's a lot of hams, in Florida that I know you're doing that at schools. So thank you. And if you spend time on your ARIS application, if they're able to be thoughtful, you can get this contact, okay? It's super competitive, but not, if you have a really good application, you're gonna get it.
And between local hams and members of ARIS, there's a whole bunch of people there to turn around and help you get there. So,
and we have a lot of openings that just happen. We have a whole lot of licensed astronauts all of a sudden. And just the way things are occurring, we're starting to have a few more openings. So we're even doing some summer contacts. Those are hard to fill at schools, but not now that we're in this interesting virtual scenario. So sign up. We have a new deadline for summer.
okay. Let's see, one more question just came in. We've got from John in England. What investigations do you carry out with the telemetry?
So I would say which. So maybe he's talking about the simulator. Will, do you want to mention about what investigations we are doing with like the ARIS Pi when we have simulator data?
Well, with the ARIS Pi, which Elaine talked a little bit about, and I know that Professor Johnson, who I'm pretty sure is watching, will be presenting about later. So, side note, definitely go take a look at his presentation tomorrow. But the ARIS Pi is simulated data, right? So it's it's generated by a program, and we receive that in the interface. And generally, what we were doing with that is sort of learning, I guess, how to look at the temperature graph and the solar panel data and things like that, and sort of learning what we can interpret, like where in orbit is the satellite, how is it turned, and I guess I'll hand it back to Mrs. Port. She probably knows a little more about that than I do.
That's okay. This, I think we're getting close on time, so I do want to say thank you for jumping in there, but you are actually able to do transmissions and receive. We have been working with the beta, working through kinks and bugs with Dr. Johnston, and so our experience has been simulating, but what kinds of things do we do with it? We can come up with link budgets. We can think about how many solar panels do we need? How many orbits will we make? Do I have enough power to make the antenna work? So those are the things. That's why we care about the simulators. And plus we wanted to use the 3D printer and prototype something. So that's kind of how we got into it. Okay. So thank you so much, everyone, 73s, and I hope to see you in space. I hope that you message me through QRZ, anything about the future vision of ISS and using amateur radio or ARIS. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melissa, Elaine, and Will. Elaine and Will, we wish the best of luck with you as you continue your education endeavors and never stop learning. But thank you very much. I appreciate you guys being part of the Hamcation Special Edition 2021, and we hope to find you down here next year. And we need to wrap this up so we can get the next